On this Saturday night, security, trade, and Trump. The Prime Minister touches down in Europe, seeking to shore up Western alliances.
Canadians have said that the rules of the game have changed, and therefore you need to adapt.
Plus, the push to protect Canada's critical minerals. Let the games begin. Vancouver hosts a star-studded start to the Invictus Games, with athletes from 24 countries, including Ukraine. Order of Canada cancelled. Singer-songwriter Buffy Sainte-Marie is stripped of the honor.
The public is finally accepting the seriousness of the allegations against her.
Plus, a change of heart.
As soon as she had the heart transplant, it's like she just snapped out of it.
Canadians with congenital heart disease are living longer but need better access to care.
To provide optimal care, you have to have those multidisciplinary teams looking after those patients.
Global National. Reporting tonight, Jeff Semple.
Dignitaries and world leaders, including Canada's Prime Minister, paying tribute to a spiritual leader and billionaire philanthropist. A private funeral service was held in Portugal to honor the Aga Khan, the 49th hereditary imam of the world's 15 million Ismaili Muslims, who died Tuesday surrounded by his family at age 88. The Aga Khan had a close connection to Canada, a friend of former Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau, who also knew his oldest son, Justin. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. For Justin Trudeau, today's funeral marked the first stop in a high-stakes trip to Europe, likely his last as Prime Minister, planning to meet with European and NATO leaders to discuss a range of issues, including those tariff threats from U.S. President Donald Trump. Our Mackenzie Gray is traveling with the Prime Minister, so Mackenzie, what should we expect?
The official reason for Justin Trudeau's trip here to Paris, Jeff, is for an artificial intelligence conference, but all the conversations he's going to have will be clouded by Donald Trump's tariff threats.
We're one of the countries in the world that have the most trade agreements. We have one with Europe.
That deal was signed back in 2016, but nearly 10 years on, it's yet to be fully implemented across the entire European Union. 10 different countries, including France, have not ratified CETA through their legislatures, meaning the deal, which takes the tariffs off 98% of goods between the EU and Canada, is only in force provisionally.
My hope is that the threat of Trump tariffs, both against Europe and obviously against Canada, will sharpen the minds of everyone involved and get them to recognize the importance of building, expanding, and reinforcing our trade relationships across the Atlantic.
That mental clarity isn't just for Canada, but also the European Union, which U.S. President Donald Trump has also threatened tariffs against. That will be a key topic of conversation when Trudeau speaks with French President Emmanuel Macron and former Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte, who's now the head of NATO. Chronically low defense spending from Canada, a consistent complaint of Donald Trump.
I think we live in a different world. Canadians have said that the rules of the game have changed, and therefore you need to adapt.
The Prime Minister will also attend a conference discussing artificial intelligence while in Paris. And Canadian experts who will be attending believe an abundant supply of green energy and a highly skilled workforce could set Canada up to be an AI superpower.
Canada is actually the engine which is enabling and powering this train. It's not an understatement to say the current progress in AI wouldn't have been possible without Canadian contribution to the field.
One leader Trudeau might seek out at the AI conference, J.D. Vance, who'll be here on his first foreign trip as vice president, and he might not be the only important American in attendance, Jeff. Elon Musk has been invited, but he's yet to say if he plans to attend.
All right, Mackenzie Gray in Paris. Thanks, Mac. Donald Trump says he is firing members of the Board of Trustees for the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts, one of the nation's premier cultural institutions. Trump says he intends to name himself as chairman and would end events featuring performers in drag. That news comes as Trump's administration faces yet another legal battle after a federal judge blocked Elon Musk's department from accessing the personal data of millions of Americans. Candice Cole reports on the ruling and reaction.
Early Saturday morning, a federal judge issued an order temporarily blocking Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency from accessing the highly sensitive data on millions of government employees housed within the Treasury Department. The order comes just a day after 19 states' attorneys general filed a request for an emergency temporary restraining order against U.S. President Donald Trump, the Treasury Department, and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent.
We will not stand for any illegal policy that puts essential services for millions of Americans at risk.
In the filing, it's alleged that the Treasury Department was directed by Trump and Bessent to expand access to DOJ personnel who were initially granted read-only access to freeze federal payments to political appointees who do not align with Trump's agenda. Legal and constitutional experts say it's a brazen overreach by the executive branch, which has so far gone unchecked.
So in a functioning system, members of Congress, Republicans who control both chambers of the U.S. Congress, would be taking action. Our Congress has failed.
Judge Paul Engelmayer, who issued the order, says Trump and Secretary Bessent violated federal law by granting such access to Musk's team. The latest in a string of legal setbacks faced by the president. Friday, a judge temporarily halted plans to place thousands of USAID workers on administrative leave. And on Thursday, a judge ruled to pause Trump's federal buyout offer to over 2 million federal workers. Another extended a pause on Trump's executive order to end birthright citizenship.
Donald Trump and Elon Musk are attempting to consolidate control in a way we haven't seen in the United States. We've seen it in other countries. You can call it dictatorship, you can call it oligarchy. It's not democracy.
It was also ruled that anyone granted unauthorized access since January 20th must immediately destroy all data obtained from the Treasury Department. A hearing on the matter is set for February 14th. Jeff?
Candice Cole in Washington. Thanks, Candice. Donald Trump says he may hold a highly anticipated meeting next week with the Ukrainian president. Volodymyr Zelensky says he's open to Trump's proposed deal, whereby Ukraine would provide critical minerals to the U.S. in exchange for continued financial and military support.
Те, що хочуть американці, так давайте deal.
In an interview, Zelensky outlined some of what Ukraine has to offer, including Europe's largest reserves of titanium, a crucial mineral for America's aeronautics and space industries. Zelensky said he's not giving away the resources, but offering a partnership to develop them jointly with the U.S. and its allies. In the Middle East, another hostage prisoner exchange between Hamas and Israel as part of that ongoing ceasefire in Gaza. Today saw 3 Israeli men taken hostage by Hamas on October 7th, released and reunited with their loved ones. The Israeli government is condemning Hamas due to the hostages' frail appearances after nearly 500 days in captivity. 183 Palestinians were also released by Israel as part of that exchange. Authorities in Alaska are working to recover the wreckage after a plane crash that killed 10 people. The U.S. Coast Guard sharing this image of what it believes to be the doomed single-engine passenger plane. The small commuter plane went down in the icy Bering Sea on Thursday, not far from its destination, the town of Nome, which was experiencing snow squalls at the time. All 9 passengers and the pilot were killed. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith is calling for an expedited review of provincial contracts with private healthcare clinics after allegations of sweetheart deals. A Globe and Mail report cited a letter from the former head of Alberta Health Services in which she claims she was subject to pressure by provincial officials to sign off on contracts for private surgical facilities. That despite concerns over the costs and who was benefiting. Smith called for the province's Auditor General to expedite a review, saying, as Premier, I was not involved in any wrongdoing, and any insinuation to the contrary is false, baseless, and defamatory. More than 500 athletes from 23 nations, including war-torn Ukraine, are in Vancouver tonight for the first ever winter edition of the Invictus Games. The opening ceremony featured a star-studded lineup, including Coldplay frontman Chris Martin. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are also in attendance. Harry founded the Games for wounded veterans more than a decade ago. Our Paul Johnson is there in Vancouver, speaking with competitors about the significance of the Games. Hi, Paul.
Jeff, for people attending this is both a special and unique event, but also just a big international sporting competition like the Olympics or the World Cup. Very few athletes make it to those, but for Invictus, the athletes who've come here have their own incredible stories to tell.
That's beautiful. That's incredible.
Invictus Games founder Prince Harry at the Musqueam Nation Friday. While Harry brings a certain kind of international star power to the Games, the real stars for the next several days are people like Ilyan Hayduk of Team Ukraine, who lost part of his right leg when a Russian missile hit his unit in 2023, killing dozens.
It's very great thing to me. You know, I just don't feel like I'm injured, like I've got some problems. I just live my life like I lived it before.
Among the events Hejduk is competing in is downhill skiing. This is him on a training run at Whistler.
I think it's a stage in recovery for people.
Outside BC Place Stadium Friday, you could meet supporters and fans from all of the countries participating. Mike from the UK is supporting his partner, who is overcoming PTSD.
You know, a lot of people have had a lot of treatment, both physically and mentally, and I think this is another step from that.
It's a personal victory if you're able to make it through the trainings and make it onto the stage here. That's the main thing.
I think it's everything. I think it's just a source of family, community, and being with people that understand what they're going through.
This year's Invictus Games feature the traditional events like indoor rowing and wheelchair rugby. But in a first for the Games, they've added new winter sports like alpine skiing and snowboarding. For athletes like Ilian Hejduk, a spot on the podium will be a coveted thing for him. And for those who aren't here.
I stand here because I survived, but I carry this responsibility to speak for those who have their stories and they can't speak today.
They're going to get straight into the competition later tonight, and tomorrow, a first for the Invictus Games and a very fitting and Canadian one, wheelchair curling. Jeff?
Paul Johnson in Vancouver. Thanks, Paul. Stripped of the Order of Canada. Coming up, the Governor-General terminates the honor given to singer-songwriter Buffy Sainte-Marie. A celebrated singer-songwriter has been stripped of one of this country's highest honors. The Governor-General terminated Buffy Sainte-Marie's appointment to the Order of Canada, which she received nearly 30 years ago. As Taria Isri explains, the rare move follows allegations that questioned the artist's claims to Indigenous heritage.
In 2021, Governor-General Mary Simon presented Buffy Sainte-Marie with a commemorative stamp. Everybody. 4 years later, Simon is the one taking one of her awards away.
At first it was, elation because, we have been, trying to set history straight. But it was also really a very, very sad event.
The notice was posted online. The appointment of Buffy Sainte-Marie to the Order of Canada was terminated by ordinance signed by the Governor-General on January 3rd, 2025.
Can you remember the time?
No official reason was given, but her removal follows a CBC investigation casting doubt on her claims of Indigenous roots.
I'm just coming down from visiting my folks in Cree Reservation in Canada.
Sainte-Marie did not respond to Global News' request for comment, but has previously denied she misrepresented herself.
I'm an artist, an activist, a mom, a survivor, and a proud member of the Native community with deep roots in Canada.
An Order of Canada termination is rare. It's only happened 9 times in history.
The public is finally accepting the seriousness of the allegations against her, and that self-indigenization is an actual problem.
I think of my great-grandmother, full-blooded Cree woman, Lucy Bruneyes.
Randy Boissonneau resigned as employment minister after shifting claims about his heritage. Canada's Auditor General is also set to examine Ottawa's multi-billion-dollar Indigenous procurement program after a Global News investigation revealed concerns of abuse.
People have gained a lot financially and in terms of social capital by playing Indian. And how do you possibly repay that?
Sainte-Marie has received honorary doctorates, multiple Junos, even an Oscar. Now the question is whether she'll get to keep those after losing Canada's highest honor. Taria Isri, Global News, Montreal.
The Governor-General, the official representative of the Crown in Canada, is getting a pay raise. Mary Simon will receive a $15,000 salary bump this year, bringing her total annual pay to $378,000. This marks the 4th increase since she was appointed to the role in 2021. The Governor-General also receives a range of perks, including a taxpayer-funded mansion, travel expenses, and a gold-plated pension. Energy security coming up, the growing calls for a new Trans-Canada pipeline. Canada's critical minerals are in the spotlight a day after the Prime Minister suggested Donald Trump is serious about trying to take over this country. Justin Trudeau's comments, along with the U.S. President's tariff threat, have sparked calls to ramp up development of Canadian natural resources. Mercedes Stevenson joins us now with more on a scenario that some had predicted for years. Mercedes.
Jeff, what Canadian politicians initially dismissed as a joke is now being seen in a very different light. The threats by Donald Trump to annex Canada into the so-called 51st state are now being taken seriously by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who told the audience at an emergency economic summit he convened on Friday that Trump's comments about absorbing Canada aren't trolling or a lark, but a reflection of the president's desire to annex Canada for our critical minerals. This week on the West Block, I'll sit down with author and journalist Diane Francis, who predicted this could happen in a book she wrote back in 2013. At the time, she noted the tremendous natural resources Canada is blessed with and calculated that Canada was actually more valuable asset-wise than the United States, making us potentially vulnerable to the U.S. casting its eye north one day.
We looked at natural resources such as forestry, water, naturally metals, minerals, fossil fuels. We looked at all of the things, the natural resource endowment of the two countries, and Canada came out $17 trillion higher.
And you can watch Mercedes' full interview with Diane Francis tomorrow morning on the West Block right here on Global. Some of the loudest calls to protect Canada's natural resources are aimed at the energy sector. As it stands, Alberta oil must travel by pipeline through the United States before making its way back up to refineries in Ontario and further east. David Aiken reports on whether a cross-country pipeline is a political pipe dream.
Finally. Western premiers were pleased to hear a federal minister start a conversation about pipelines. That is the number one interprovincial regulatory challenge that we have in this nation.
I hope that this has been a wake-up call to Eastern Canada, that they are 100% reliant on oil coming in from foreign sources and gas coming in from foreign sources. And we're the solution.
TransCanada Pipelines had proposed the Energy East project. That would have taken Alberta crude to refineries in Montreal and St. John, New Brunswick. But that plan died in 2017 for a number of reasons, one of which was fierce opposition from all sectors of society in Quebec. Some of that opposition, though, may be softening.
I won't have this kind of project without social acceptability, and the situation has changed.
I think Canadian governments, plural, provincial and the federal government, and Canadian industry have realized that we're too dependent on one market, the United States.
And in any event, Western oil and gas producers these days are looking to Pacific customers, not Eastern Canadian ones.
If you're an exporter to Western Canada, what you want is the shortest route to a high-value market. And right now, the high-value market is Asia. And if you're building a pipeline from Edmonton to St. John, that is in no way the shortest route to market.
Now, a 25% tariff, even a 10% tariff imposed by the U.S. could change that calculation, but then there's the pipeline builders and operators themselves, and they don't sound so optimistic. One industry source said today, Energy East is dead, period. Another referred to such a project as a, quote, mythological pipeline. Jeff.
David Aiken in Ottawa. Thanks, David. Up next, children with congenital heart disease are living longer but face a new hurdle. Welcome back. In Canada, at least 250,000 people suffer from congenital heart disease, which means their heart was not functioning properly from birth. Thanks to medical advancements, 9 in 10 newborns now survive into adulthood. Catherine Ward has the story of one 8-year-old who needed a transplant at 5 months and the calls for better access to care.
8-year-old Nora Shorts has big plans for the future.
When I grow up, I want to be a gymnast. I'll do the elbow cartwheel.
Nora and her brother Koa have been a package deal since the beginning. Twins born
1 minute
apart. But minutes after birth, Nora unexpectedly suffered a heart attack.
She started to go blue and she just had this look of distress on her face.
The newly formed family of 4 forced to separate as Nora was rushed to Sick Kids in Toronto.
My husband told me that if I didn't come that morning, I probably wouldn't see her alive.
Doctors said Nora needed a new heart. At 5 months old, a successful transplant saved her young life.
As soon as she had the heart transplant, it's like she just snapped out of it. All of the sickness and everything that she was going through, it's like it just went away.
257,000 Canadians have congenital heart disease, just like Nora, according to a new report by the Heart and Stroke Foundation. Because of medical advancements, 9 in 10 babies now survive into adulthood. They typically need specialized medical care, which isn't available in every hospital.
And in the majority of provinces, it requires families to move to the centers where the surgery is offered. So that often requires relocation or staying in a foreign city for a prolonged period of time.
Treatments are often complex.
Congenital heart disease can have impact on the brain, can have impact on the liver, can have impact on the kidneys, and so on and so on. So to provide optimal care, you have to have those multidisciplinary teams looking after those patients.
The Heart and Stroke Foundation is calling for more funding and support to manage the growing number of congenital heart patients, a need they say is critical. So children like Nora can chart their own course in the world with their families cheering them on the whole way. Catherine Ward, Global News, Toronto.
And that is Global National for this Saturday night. I'm Jeff Semple. Tonight's Your Canada is Headingley, Manitoba. We love seeing your Canada, so please keep emailing your photos to globalnational@globalnews.ca. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you back here again tomorrow. Have a great night.